to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and I'm really excited today because we have some new music from Bruce Dickinson. And the song is called The Afterglow of Ragnarok. So I have been excited for a new Bruce Dickinson solo album for a long time. I haven't really done many podcasts about it. I will tell you something else I am working on. There will be an episode going up where I am going to also be talking about his previous 6 solo albums. And I actually went back and grabbed some interview clips from the radio show back in the day of Bruce Dickinson, Adrian Smith, and Roy Z talking about, their time in making some of those records as well. So definitely stay tuned for that. I will have that episode sometime this month in December. So with that being said, let's talk about the new Bruce Dickinson song. I'm going to talk about what I think the album is going to sound like. I am going to talk about where I think this album is headed, like what vibes I get from it, how I compare it to some of his past solo work. And let's start off with the fact it's pretty much a concept album. Now, obviously, if you watch the video, it plays off like a short story or a short movie. But the thing that, I get, here's what I get. I get the vibe from The Chemical Wedding or Tyranny of Souls. I lean more towards The Chemical Wedding because The Chemical Wedding was loosely based on the works of William Blake. And if you look at the beginning of the new song Bruce put out, lo and behold, there's a quote from William Blake. Now, the video I thought was very well done, very well shot, looked really, really cool. But who is William Blake? A lot of people are like, who is this guy? He is an artist. He was a painter, a poet, and he was most of his stuff was done during what we would call, historians would call the Romantic Age, which was more of an artistic, intellectual movement that went on in Europe in like the early 1800s to the mid 1800s. So, most historians would say between 1800 and 1850, but William Blake, his works were prominently done during that time. And so if you listen to The Chemical Wedding, for example, The Chemical Wedding was, a lot of that album was loosely based on works by William Blake. And the vibe I get from this song, the reason I say I get the Chemical Wedding vibe, it sounds like a more modern version of something off of that album, or maybe Tyranny of Souls. I mean, that's really where I'm going with it. It's got the down-tuned guitars, which been pretty much a trademark for Bruce for quite some time. Accident of Birth was kind of, when Roy got back into the fold, Accident of Birth, Chemical Wedding, Tyranny of Souls, you kind of got that kind of sound, that kind of guitar sound. I think the production of the song is fantastic, but that is the vibe I'm going for because it's a concept album. You have kind of this more epic feel to the song. It's more of a mid-tempo song, which is why it reminds me a lot of The Chemical Wedding. And it has a very, the one thing that this song does is it has these verses. He sings these verses that kind of build up into this real catchy chorus that is just fantastic. I mean, it's a very well-composed, well-written song. And let's not forget, Roy Z is in a mix. Roy Z and Bruce Dickinson, they're just that musical pair that was meant to make music together. I think the song is every bit as good as I thought it was going to be. But realistically, for me, I think it sounds like a more modern day version of the Chemical Wedding. And that's the vibe that is the vibe I get from it. So I'm really excited. Obviously, it's going to be a concept album. And, it's one of those things where, the countdown's on. I cannot wait for this to come out. Now, I'm going to admit to you all, Bruce Dickinson is probably my favorite singer of all time, at least favorite frontman of all time. And his solo stuff, I hate to say this too, but I like his solo stuff a lot better than most of what Iron Maiden has done since he came back into that band. I'm not going to lie to you folks. I mean, there's other people that feel the same way. Some people may not feel that way, but for example, I would take this new Bruce Dickinson song that just came out over anything off of the last Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu, which had some pretty good songs on it. But you know, the down-tuned guitars, the real epic chorus. I mean, it's a lot. And the great thing about Bruce's solo stuff is that even though it's heavy metal, even though it's melodic, even though it has a very catchy hook and chorus in it, it sounds a lot different than Iron Maiden. It's a completely, like any of his solo stuff, aside from his vocals, his music really sounds a lot different than Iron Maiden does. It just does. You know, because Iron Maiden really doesn't down-tune guitars, for example, you know, like you would hear on Bruce's stuff. You know, and I think it might have done it on one song at one point, but Iron Maiden just doesn't do that. So the sound and the vibe in this album is obviously a lot different than Iron Maiden. And that really goes for any of Bruce's solo stuff, especially the first three albums, which were more, you know, like one was more hard rock, and, you know, Skunkworks and Balls of Picasso are a little more like experimental. But I like it. I think it's great. Folks, I'm not going to lie to you, I went and pre-ordered the vinyl single for it. You know, got to get that, right? I mean, which I think it was like $10 or whatever it was when I pre-ordered it. But I have to say that if I were to rate this scale on a scale of 1 to 10, probably going to give it a 9. It really is that great of a song. I like the way the video illustrates the story. Like, it illustrates the story. You have, you know, the lyrics are obviously there, but it kind of gives an illustration and it gives some credit. So he's really, you know, the one thing I love about this is Bruce is really going all out for this thing. I mean, there's nothing, what I would say, half-assed about it, right? I mean, you got this big movie production. You have an amazing sounding production as far as the sound of the album, and the song is great. And I think that the album is going to be every bit as good as the song that he just put out. I think it's an epic track. I definitely love it. You know, the highlights for me, again, I mean, the chorus really brings it in. Like, when you listen to the song, it builds up to that, and I'm going to keep going back to that. The hook in the chorus and the melody in the chorus really caught me, and I thought it was great. And, you know, the videos itself is pretty good, but really it's the music that matters for me. The video is kind of more like icing on the cake. But it's cool. It's going to be a concept album. And, you know, I don't really know what the concept really is about for the most part. I really didn't pay as much attention to that. But it definitely gives me that Chemical Wedding, Tyranny of Souls vibe when I listen to it. So with that said, that's all I have to say for now about it. I cannot wait for another song to drop, and I cannot wait for this album to come out in 2024. Thanks for watching. Stay metal.